This is part 2 of the start finish guide. We're going to have a few other Casey's Mod tips in here, and we're going to look at some specific cards that are only in Casey's Mod. Last time we looked at the first 5 starter decks. We looked at Vanilla, the Triple Sacrifice, the Ant deck, the Mantis God deck, and the Waterborne deck, which is the Great Kraken and 2 Kingfishers. And in this one, we're going to take a nice long look at the Bone deck, or at least my winning run with the Bone deck. And we're going to briefly look at the Geck deck, because I labored over that for probably a day or two until I finally got a good run with that. And then we're going to finish off with a brief look at the Curious Egg deck, because I do have another video that's going to be coming out right after this that is going to show you my main account run with the Curious Egg. But we will be going through some of the events that happened as I was working towards my 12th level run on this account. So here we're a bit of the way in to the Bone deck here. We picked the Warren and the Lammergeier as our 2 cards to start out with that went along with our Raccoon, Direwolf Pup, and Coyote, which you can see right here. Of course, the Direwolf just evolved. So this actually is pretty soon after I started, and I'm going to be doing quite a few edits, cutting out a lot of the normal card battles, because there's not a lot to see in a lot of those battle events. But I will be showing you a lot of the cards that I pick up and different events that involve changing cards, getting rid of cards, adding cards, things like that. The Cuckoo is always good, but we're trying to stick to the Raccoon as the only single sacrifice for that fair hand mechanic, so we end up going with the Mud Turtle instead. And I thought I had the timing right, apparently not. I'm going to pick it any day now. There we go. And eventually, spoiler alert, eventually I'm going to actually take the shield off the Mud Turtle and put it on something else, and just to minimize the amount of cards. It's a tough balance. You want enough cards so that you can get through a card battle without going into starvation. You want to be able to have some powerful cards. You want to be able to use some powerful cards, maybe take some sigils off of certain cards and put them on other ones. But if you end up having too many cards, then you can't really trust that you're going to have the right cards at the right time all the time. There's so many cards that I grab early in the game. Maybe it's a triple sacrifice, like a Grizzly or a Moose Buck, or even the Lammergeier, and I don't see them for pretty much the entire run. So what I did right there is something I did talk about in the last video. I noticed that the Coyote, out of all my cards, was the least important to me, so I wanted to try to get rid of it. And because the survivors didn't take it on the second upgrade, I decided to reload and actually put both of those points to the Raccoon so that it could be hitting with 3 instead of 1. That way our guaranteed always starter card, with the fair hand mechanic, it being a single sacrifice, that way I can depend on that being always available on the first turn of every card battle, and something that is going to hit with enough force that we can at least get ahead of our opponent. And the reason I devalued the Coyote was because this was probably, I want to say, the second or third, maybe even fourth bone deck run that I was working on. And what I had learned from the previous runs was that I was earning bones, but then I was spending them on cards that required bones to use. And then I wasn't saving up the bones so that I could use the Lammergeier. In this run, I don't use the Lammergeier all that much. It either doesn't show up in my hand. I don't even know why I don't even see it here. I should see it. Oh, I can't. Oh, that's because this is a power upgrade, and you can't upgrade the Lammergeier's power. That is why. And also something that happened about 2 minutes ago into the video. We made a sacrifice of the Warren onto the raccoon so that we get a rabbit every single time we put our raccoon down in the first turn of every card battle, which is very useful. We put the shield on the dire wolf pup just to minimize the amount of cards that we have. I do like that that turtle though. It hits with a power of 2, has 2 health, has the shield, so it can get, it can get the job done. As mentioned before, since we're looking at quite a few hours of footage here, I'm cutting out most of the card battles just because we don't really need to see the same thing happening over and over again. These boss fights, you're going to do them so many times in your 13 runs, plus all the runs that don't work for you, that you don't need to see it again. So we end up picking the Magpie here just because I feel like that's the best card to have in our deck so that we can access either the Lammergeier or some other card that ends up being something we want at that time. And of course we have 2 different card events there and a bone sacrifice to get a bone card, backpack, all that kind of stuff we get. I wanted to show this really quick because I don't think I've talked about it. This was in the, I think, Act 1, but you see that static card there? That's known as a glitch card. Basically, if you choose that, it will reproduce a random card you already have in your deck. So it'll just make it a little bit more common for just some random card to show up. And it always changes. Here I decided to pick the adder. The idea was that I wanted to feed it to the survivors. It is the other card other than the ringworm that can wipe the survivors out and allow you to upgrade twice at each campfire event. Later on we picked up the pack rat, or actually I think that was right afterwards. Picked up the pack rat, and then we had 2 cave events that gave us pretty much the same thing. I don't think they're back to back here in the video, but I'm looking at the cards I have. Here's where we're at. We have 2 pack rats, which we're going to put together at the mycologists at some point. I believe in this run we do that. And a couple other cards that are, doing well enough for us. But I definitely tried to stay away from loading up too many bone cost cards in the hopes that I could use the Lammergeier better. But that alpha right there, triple sacrifice, unkillable, leader, of course, leader sigil. That's the one time I decided, okay, I can spend bones on that because that is really great. Later on we grab the moose buck and we head to the mycologist. And we put the pack rat together to get 4 power, 4 health. Would be nice if you got 2 items with a combined pack rat card. Eventually I decided to put the magpie on the what did I put it? Oh, I put it on the raven. I don't know why. That was a weird choice. I think I wanted to keep some kind of... Oh, yeah, because I was going for bird totems. And I don't know why I got rid of the magpie then if I was planning on using a bird totem, but that's what I did. The angler fight was pretty standard. And another cave event here, and the outcome is almost identical to our previous cave card event. We pick the alpha right here in the middle. It's got the pack rat sigil and the boulder sigil. What's that called? Still can't remember what it's called, but it wards away Touch of Death and Stinky. And this surprised me. I didn't think it was actually going to transfer all the sigils, but we actually got all 5 sigils on this alpha card. Power of 2, health of 4. Definitely worth spending 4 bones on that one. Later on we have another card event here. And we go for the Great White because it has double attack and the Corpse Maggot Sigil, which I don't remember exactly what that's called either. That is going to be absolutely awesome. If we have it in our hand, then that means it's going to take the place of a card once it perishes. And now we have our bird totem, and now we're going to get extra bones every time we play a bird card. This is Goobert. I don't believe I showed this in the last video. I think I talked about it, but maybe didn't show it. Goobert will paint a replica of any card that you give him, and he can change 1 or 2 things on it. He might change the sigil, which is fairly rare, but he also might give you 1 more or less of power or health. Here we have an identical raccoon, and that way we can possibly make use out of that. I'm showing a little bit of the Prospector fight here before we head into the final map, just to show that Great White takes the place of the raccoon once it gets cleaved, axed, turned into gold nugget, and it hits with a double attack of 4, man. 8 power. That'll definitely win the fight for you. Even though I'm trying to minimize the amount of bones I'm spending while in card battles, I do pick another bone cost card, the cockroach, because the cockroach is always great to use. And then I did want to show this. I know we looked at the Ijarak in the previous video, but here is what the Ijarak might look like. Oh, not here yet, but I decided on this one, I decided to pick the Rat King just in case it gave me the edge I needed. So for a lot of these runs with the Bone deck, I was trying to get the Black Goat so that I could give that to the Bone Lord. If you see the first card here, the Douse question mark with the red eye, that's the Ijarak. If I were to pick that, then the Ijarak would be in my deck. But I go with the Amalgam anyway. But certainly if you're trying to use the Lammergeier, if you're trying to get maximum amount of bones during a card battle, giving the Black Goat up to the Bone Lord sacrifice, I'm not sure exactly what that event is called, but it's the one where you sacrifice one of your cards and you get one of those bone cards like we just saw there, except you get 8 bones from that one card if you give the Bone Lord the Black Goat. So if you can make that happen, then you are going to be really doing well with the Lammergeier or any other bone cost card. I could buy both alphas with that. So we're going to let this play out. Pretty standard with the fight, but we do like to show how we do wrap things up here. Of course, the adder, never got to feed that to the survivors. Ends up being a little less useful than some other cards, and it does pop up rather often, even though it's a double sacrifice. We may as well go ahead and use any items that we get, and we can allow the angler to take that boulder because that's not going to hurt us any. Also doesn't hurt to have him grab some squirrels, because squirrels aren't going to hurt either. That is kind of a powerful sigil there on that totem. Every time a card from your opponent comes down and causes any of your cards to perish, they will gain a number, a higher power level, which will make them harder and harder to win against. So we decide to get rid of the amalgam right away with the adder, touch of death. So that card definitely comes in fairly useful right there. Now, if this was the beginning of the fight, we would have 5 hits, but unfortunately we need one more hit to win this round. We definitely have enough to use the Lammergeier. I think this is when we start actually using them. This is always kind of a weird thing with the Leshy fight. They give you one wolf pelt, and you have to decide which card is the one you want to get rid of. Or I guess the one you want in your hand instead. And I don't think I realized as I was picking it that the Reginald here is a bone cost card. So I was kind of hoping to save all the bones I could for the Lammergeier. But at least that means we can put him down and the squirrel as well if we want to get rid of the pack rat, and then we should be able to hit with enough to move on to the final moon round. My fault for accidentally editing it out just now, but I had a little piggy bank as one of my backpack items, so we added what do you get from that? 4 or 8 coins? I'm not sure. But we added that to the pile and decided to get the Lammergeier finally on the board and start doing some damage. And it's a bird, so it's making bones as it's spending bones, so that's good. We're all out of backpack items at this point. And of course we get some bone cost cards, which means Lammer's going to hit with a little less power. But we're still good. So I think the best thing to do in this situation, play the cockroach again, let it get killed by the moon, and then the great white will take its place. A good bit of damage. I think I was worried about losing the Lammer at this point. Maybe that's why I didn't. It looks like we're going to have to lose it anyway. There it goes. Okay, now the Great White's taken its place. Put down the Wolf Pup. And we can also put the Cockroach down, because at this point it doesn't matter how many bones we spend. And that'll do it. So again, there are a lot of variations and a lot of fun ways you can use the bone deck. It'll, it might give you a reason to use cards you don't normally use because they cost bones. And it might give you an opportunity to use the Lammergeier and really make use out of it. But that was the 8th level. So we got Roar of a Challenge. And that takes care of that. Now we're going to move on to the tail end of the Geck Deck. These are the cards I had towards the end of the run. This one took me a long time, but luckily I got a chance to power up the Geck to 3, and then I got a Goobert event where he painted me a Geck with power of 2 and health of 5, and those Gecks are unkillable, which means I can play them over and over and over again, which is extremely useful now that I have 2 of them. I guess there's only 4 bones in that little piggy bank, and we get to do another Goobert. And we're going to do the Geck again and get an even better copy of the card. The Mantis is definitely helping us out there. That's one of our primary cards. The Mud Turtle was doing fine. We got the Lammer, but we never really got to use it. Of course, now I had the Black Goat for a long time, but no Bone Lord sacrifices. I think actually in this one I end up getting it though by the end of the run. This time Buddy Goobert gives us a 4/5 unkillable Geck with no cost. And of course, Leshy is using the totem that comes, the sigil that comes with the Wolverine, one of the new cards that we unlocked recently. Every time one of their cards kills one of my cards, they gain a power of 1. So I'm not really showing the full issue with this deck. I was going to say full potential, but there's really no potential with it. If you don't remember, the deck comes with a rabbit, a tadpole, and the Geck. And the Geck is power of 1, health of 1. The tadpole and the rabbit both have attack 0, and I think the rabbit has health of 1. The tadpole might have a higher health, but they're practically useless. The tadpole turns into the bullfrog, which is a fine, card to use in Act 1, but at this point in Casey's mod, with all these challenges that you're playing with, the bullfrog isn't very useful. It has that shield against airborne, and that's about it. That's all it has going for it. So starting out with 3 no-cost cards that don't really have barely any attack. I mean, the Geck is the only one that has an attack. It's very hard to get this deck off the ground, and you really need some decent cards to start with. And if you noticed, I had a lot of single sacrifice cards in this deck. So it was touch and go there for a while, and even one of them's a black goat, which, you know, why even have the black goat? Especially now that I have 3 Gecks that can attack with you know, the total power of 9, 3 of them. Why bother using a triple sacrifice black goat that does nothing? So yeah, you definitely want to get your hands on some decent cards and just basically ignore the rabbit and the tadpole and get yourself to a point where you can upgrade the Geck as much as possible. And the unkillable sigil is the best thing to get on it, because you can use it over and over and over again. It has no cost. If it has power behind it, then you can really do some great stuff with it. So we're wrapping this up here because we have these 3 Gecks. Again, this is really the only way to go. We should be good here with 10 points altogether that we're gonna. I don't even know why I did that. I could have finished it right there, but I decided, why not get a few more cards on the table? I don't think you can get rid of that cockroach like through sacrifice. Otherwise, I would have done that, because the cockroach isn't packing a punch like the other Geck would. Then we go for the coyote. Again, not that great of a card, but definitely better to have than some of the other ones. We'll let some of this next bit play out, and we'll take a look at finishing off the Geck Deck run. Again, even though we're at the tail end of the run, let's just take a quick look at what I have in here. You know, you start with the Geck, the tadpole, and the rabbit there on the bottom left. But we had a wolf cub, wolf, cockroach, raccoon, which is basically our primary attack. But this was the one, I think I mentioned it in the previous video. I had the cracked egg on it, but no airborne sigil. So basically every time you put the raccoon down, it would put a cracked egg above it and then attack that cracked egg. So it would be a completely worthless turn with the raccoon. I was very upset about that. The mantis, I used as much as I could get my hands on it, and you know, that 6 attack is certainly better than 1 or 3 or any, you know, 4 or 5. Coyote we had just gotten, the 3 Gecks, the dire wolf, of course, with the 2-on-2 attack, and I think up there we also had moose buck, and I think one other single sacrifice card, a couple other things like that. So this fight is pretty standard at the beginning. I'm probably going to cut a little bit of this out because there's really no sense in watching me play the whole thing. And then towards the end, some of the heavy hitters come out. So let's skip ahead a little bit here. So as you can see, we are off to the final round with the moon here. We have a wise clock, but obviously can't use that at this point. And we had a hand tentacle card there, but we gave it up for the lammer. rather have my 4 power Geck, but beggars can't be choosers. We don't want to spend too many bones so that the lammer can hit with the most power as possible. And that'll do it. And then we're going to move on to the Curious Egg run that we've already looked at a little bit in the first video. We are quite a ways in here now. I did want to show this bit though. At some point, I had the opportunity to pick up a pelt lice. And I just put this rabbit pelt down and out jumps the pelt lice out of our deck, not even in our hand. Of course, we have a rabbit totem for all insects. Pelt lice hits with double attack, even though it's only 1 power, so it hits with 2. You can upgrade that. A little note about the pelt lice: if you do choose to take it, if it's offered to you, again, you don't necessarily have to worry about making the 4 sacrifice cost for it, because it will arrive on the board every time you play a pelt. The downside of it is, if you go to the trader and you have the pelt lice in your deck, he will not allow you to buy any cards with your pelt cards. He'll say your pelts are infected, and he will turn you away and not give you any business. So, is it worth hitting your opponent with 2, a double attack of 1 with this pelt lice? Is it worth keeping a 4 sacrifice card in your deck and using pelts, which are worthless pretty much in battle? You decide. You decide. Pelt lice has kind of become one of the memeier cards in this game, and seems kind of pointless to me. So I wanted to just show that off. I am going to sacrifice that in a few clips here. You'll see that go away. But again, the egg, if you don't remember from the previous video, we have to get all 5 tribes. We have to get cards that have a power level of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and a health level of 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So along the way, we've been picking cards that have those numbers, and if we can't get those numbers, we've been manipulating the cards in ways by upgrading their power and health, and you will see me combine 2 pack rats to get a power and health level of 4. Here, I decided I didn't want to join 2 of the Curious Eggs because it would be great to use 3 of the cards once they can evolve into their next stage. And here I think this is probably my 2nd pack rat. It might be my 3rd, but we are going to combine 2 of those together. And then the angler fight, I think I remember something coming up on this fight and a reason why I wanted to show it off. So let's watch and see what happens. I just saw the reason that I did keep this in. The strange larva. I don't believe I don't remember showing this card in the previous video or any of the other Casey's Mod videos that I've made. The strange larva has 3 evolutions. It starts with a 0 and 3 health, and then it evolves into a just as useless 0 and 3 health pupa. And then finally in the 3rd stage, I mean, 3 health is pretty good. You put it down And you're not going to get a lot of cards that are going to wipe it out with those 2 turns. I mean, it still very well could be wiped out, but and put the Mantis in there for a power of 6, which in the end we're not going to actually need. Actually, we need 7 attack, otherwise he's going to grab our Mantis. So we put down the rabbit to distract him. Oh, okay, and we do the direwolf pup. Which should have just the right amount of attack to save it. Moving on to the second round, you can now see the final evolution of the strange larva, and it is a Mothman with a power of 7, and I believe it keeps its health of 3. The grizzly could please get out of my way. Yes, it does. Okay. Airborne, because it's a giant Mothman. And we decide to show it off. Just 1 hit more. I didn't have to use that grizzly. It makes more sense to hit with those 3 cards. We got a nice amount of teeth for it too. And so again, this is a curious egg run. Very rarely am I gonna not pick the Mantis God, but for this one, the Amalgam is just a great card to have in your back pocket because it is of every tribe. It has a power and health of 3, so very useful. So with the Curious Egg deck, in order to make the most out of those cards, you need to get power levels 1 through 5. So my idea was, which I really should have just gone for the grizzly. I don't know why I didn't. I have a grizzly there. I should have just upgraded him once. But we go for the moose buck and we try to go for a double upgrade. And we end up missing out on the moose buck. Luckily we have the Amalgam, so the moose buck was our only hooved animal, but the Amalgam took the place of that, and then we were actually down, I think, a feathered creature, so we got the Raven, it looks like. Because I don't see any hooved cards here. We got insect, we got reptile. So at this point, I was able to show the pelt lice off, and it was not really doing anything special for us. So we take its double attack and we move that on to the Amalgam. I was able to get the moose buck back though. As you can see, we have 2 pack rats, we have a grizzly at 4, and we know that we're going to be able to visit the mycologist and then a campfire event. So we'll get our 4s from the pack rat and the 5 from the grizzly if we can get a power upgrade. Dire wolf, we got the mud turtle, we got the mantis. So we go ahead and grab the moose buck. Whether or not we need him, we grab him just to make things a little bit easier. We head up to the mycologist and we're going to merge the pack rats so that we can get our 4s. And now that we have 2 4s, we can utilize the grizzly and move the grizzly up to 5 on power. If we get the right campfire, if we get health, then we don't get our hydras. So we chance it and we go for it and we see if it works. And luckily enough, I know, spoiler, it's power. So with this final move, we can now turn our Curious Egg deck into 3 hydras, which hit with a attack, a 5, a bifurcated, a 5 hit attack from the hydras. 1 bone cost for every one of those cards to use, and you will see what that looks like here in just a second, because we're going to get the Curious Egg to pop up right at the beginning here. So here is the Curious Egg, which turns into the Hydra, which has all sorts of heads. Snake, looks like a deer, a bird, a wolf, and then I guess an insect in the back there. I'm not sure what that is. It does have the annoying sigil because we applied that to our starter deck as one of the challenges. It has a bifurcated and a trifurcated attack, so it hits 5 times. And of course it costs 1 bone card, so you can't play it at the very opening move. And we're going to play it. Often when I use the Mantis God in this card battle, it takes out the traps and doesn't give me a pelt. But I think in this instance with the Hydra, I think it actually works pretty well. Pack Rat goes for the trap. Hydra gets taken by a trap as well, and then we finish that fight with pretty much no issues. So here's the final fight of the Curious Egg deck. And we'll let this play out. And then we will see both the challenge trophy for getting through level 12 and the start finish trophy will both conclude this video at the end of this fight. And again, a full Curious Egg run, it will be featured in a video coming out pretty much right after this one. You can see how I assembled the cards I needed for my main account run on the 12th level. There's Rise to the Challenge, which is the final challenge trophy for getting through level 12 of challenges. And that unlocks the final boss, the secret boss at the end of a run. So you can add that and all other challenges together to get the Skullstorm run that you'll need. And here is the start finish trophy, which occurred at the same time as Rise to the Challenge, for completing Casey's mod with every starter deck. Hope this helped. Take care.